So, you've probably heard about the ideas for starting colonies on Mars, and this is something that we'd want to do, because if something ever happens that makes our species go extinct, like if there's a meteor or a plague, or if there's a large war, that having other civilizations would be very beneficial. Also, we're overpopulating on the planet Earth. That's another reason that that having other landing on other planets and colonizing them would be a good idea. But overall, it's just good for the future of humanity. I did some research on this topic, and you know, there are some plans from NASA to land on Mars, and there are some plans to help out with the colonization of Mars, but one very, very large organization that was involved in the idea. One very large organization that was involved in the idea was a company called, who their mission is basically known as Mars One, and their group is being run by a guy called Elon Musk. So yeah, they've got a plan on how they intend to colonize Mars, and it's really interesting. So they came up with their idea for the mission in 2009. And by the way, the link to their website's in the description. Obviously, it's not sponsored. Like, what the fuck? Do you think I can get sponsorships? Not really. Anyways, so they came up with their idea for the mission in 2009, and in 2011, that people worldwide had been chosen for the mission. So, this year, in 2017, that they'll have people training until the launch starts on how to repair things, grow food, and do medical procedures. Right now, they're using easy-to-reach deserts. Soon they'll be using less familiar environments like the Arctic desert. In 2022, they plan to prove the technologies to colonize Mars are available, which, according to their website, they just need to put them together. There'll be a device in Mars that can live stream video from Earth to Mars, and an experiment will be done where water will be extracted from Mars's soil. In 2024, they plan to put a satellite into Mars's orbit to be able to communicate, send videos, pictures, and other data. This will be able to be done all day on Mars, except for when the sun is in between the planets. In 2026, they'll launch a rover and a trailer to be able to transport landing modules and search for good settling areas. A second satellite will be put around Mars that'll work even when the sun is between the planet. All the supplies, life support, and 6 cargo missions will be put on Mars on 2029, and there'll also be a rover which it will make a signal as a beacon. In 2030, the life support systems will be set up with batteries by rovers. Tubes will be connected to transport water, air, and electricity. Water will be extracted from the soil, and part of that water will be used to set up the oxygen in the life support tanks. There'll be nitrogen and argon, which will be extracted from the atmosphere to make up the rest of the air, because our atmosphere is not just oxygen. If it was, it would just blow up, because oxygen's not very stable of a gas. So in 2031, a crew will be launched into both Mars and Earth's orbit, sent back to Earth, then they'll be sent to Mars. In 2032, the crew will land on Mars, and they'll be given 48 hours to get used to gravity, because there's not going to be gravity in the ship, and they'll stay in a living unit to recover. Then, they will set up the rest of their colony. So a second crew will be sent to Mars, and their living crews will be set up already. New crews will be launched every 26 months. You might be wondering, how will they be able to have food on Mars? Well, they're not just going to bring supplies of it from Earth. They've actually found a way, or they're looking for a way to be able to make self-sustainable food supplies for the people living on Mars. So, basically that Martian soil is very similar to the soil on Earth. So they did an experiment. This was their first one, so not all the variables could be controlled. But they basically tested to see how worms would do in soil similar to Mars. So they had the worms crawl around and eat the dirt in order to make it healthier soil. And it worked. The worms very much were able to behave in the same way. They experimented on like how the worms did when the soil was given water and when it was dry, and they compared it to normal Earth soil. So yeah, when they're growing plants, that obviously the plants need to be grown inside of domes to protect it from radiation. Also, soil is very poor on Mars, so they're going to have to use manure. Unfortunately, there's not any animals, so they have to use human feces, which has many types of bacteria that are harmful, unless they're fine in your digestive system, but they're harmful if they go into certain parts of your body, so that soil has to be sterilized first. And since that pigs are very similar to humans, that they used an experiment with pig feces as a substitute. And they figured out they had to sterilize it, because when they didn't, that mushrooms grew in it. And it attracted flies, which wouldn't be a problem on Mars. However, worms were able to do their job of making the manure suitable to be mixed with dirt. So anyways, I saw some sites, talking about some of the flaws with this plan, and obviously that, I decided to look at them, and, I've trying to look at the other side of the issue. I thought that these were some points that were important to bring up, but I'm not sure if they were very good. They mentioned eco-terrorists who basically, that whenever you mess up the environment on Earth, they get violent, and, people mentioned that there would be eco-terrorists who really, really, really wouldn't want you to mess up the environment on Mars. This seemed kind of weak to me, but maybe it's true. Anyways, it said that we shouldn't quit paying attention to climate change, because people may think of the Earth as more disposable, and that we should destroy it if we go to Mars. It won't be as bad if we destroy our planet if we just have another one, which obviously we need to expand, and we also need to take care of the planet where we originally came from. Now here's a good issue. Basically, which laws do we use when we're in space? Whose government has authority? especially if colonies are being set up by companies who, you know, we would need all sorts of policies for what you are and aren't allowed to do in space. Also, there is a possibility that there are some tiny organisms on Mars we don't know about, and if we just go hop on Mars before we go check on those, that, like, people won't be able to distinguish if an organism, like a bacteria, came from Earth, or if it was native to Mars. And we could accidentally destroy all those life forms. So yeah, anyways, the way that this works is that you can donate for Space One. You can donate to get points, and the points can be exchanged for prizes and an invitation to the Mars One event, which I think means a ticket to become an astronaut. They said that if you donate enough, that you can basically go to their space mission and become a colonist on Mars, but they said they're currently not accepting any new applications. They had 500,000 people apply for their first mission, and they lowered it down to 100, and then they lowered it down to 4, or they're saying they're going to lower it down to 4 colonists. However, they said that they are planning to let in new applicants in the future, and obviously they're going to need a lot of colonists. So it's probably going to be easier to get there as their space mission develops more. But yeah, like if they have a if they have a second crew and and basically that they have new missions every 26 months, that obviously that if you want, you'll be able to go. And it'll be a lot easier if missions, if their colonies become more sophisticated, that they'll be able to get less experienced people. Now here is a concern. Elon Musk basically said that using traditional means it would cost about $10 billion per person to go to Mars. However, that he says that, you know, if people donate and stuff, that it can be lowered down to 200,000, and he has some other ideas to make the trip cheaper. First of all, their rockets are, to launch one of their rockets, it will cost $62 million, but that's pretty cheap for a rocket. But in order to lower prices, they're thinking of using resources such as methane for fuel and having reusable rockets. And the thing about methane is that you can find it on Mars, so you can fuel your ships directly when you're on Mars from the methane you find on the planet. And also that governments are thinking of giving prizes to the first organization who creates a colony in space. What you can't forget is that we've also got space programs run by the government. You know, the US government and Russian governments are planning trips to Mars. The US has NASA. They calculated that all the prices, not just the launch prices, but the prices of visiting and having the resources, would cost overall, in order to go to Mars by the date that, like, you know, Obama suggested, which is 2035, it would cost $1.5 trillion. But what you gotta remember is that you don't pay all of this immediately. You have to add up that amount by that point in the future. And if it's not difficult, as long as we really want to go, we can gradually increase the funding for NASA until they have the money. And, you know, the government will get involved in this if this happens. So You know, they may have mainly the stuff for launching the rockets and not necessarily for colonizing Mars, but, you know, we don't know. This is important. So anyways, that there are some differences and similarities to Mars and Earth. Let's start with the similarities. Martian soil is similar to Earth's. Mars has a similar amount of land to settle. Mars has water on it, like ice caps, and there's water in the soil, and Mars has a similar tilt to Earth. Mars has less gravity, and too little gravity can have negative effects on your muscles and bones, but they haven't figured out how Mars's particular gravity will affect people. They were planning on doing an experiment to test this, but they weren't able to do it due to lack of funding. Mars is very cold. Its lowest temperature is negative 87 degrees Celsius and negative 5 degrees Celsius, or for America and some other countries, negative 125 degrees Fahrenheit and 23 degrees Fahrenheit. So, you know, the 23 degrees Fahrenheit is the highest, or negative 5 degrees Celsius. That's insane. But that's the highest. The average will be below that. You have negative 125 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 87 degrees Celsius. Like obviously they'll be using their spacesuits. They had to do that for the moon too. But yeah, their atmosphere doesn't protect from UV rays and other harmful items from space. They would have to be trading between Earth and Mars. First of all, they would have to mine a lot of resources. The people living on Mars would have to mine a lot of resources in order to sustain their own colonies, but also to justify spending money to send people to Mars, they would have to trade resources with the Earth. Mars has, like, rocks with metals such as iron and nickel, so this can be useful. Obviously, you've got the US and Russian governments planning trips to Mars, and if we can get successful enough, colonies on Mars, we can start colonizing asteroids. Now, I don't have a source for this, but here's something that I know. Asteroids can be pretty big. There are asteroids that are larger than the planet Pluto, which Pluto isn't a planet, by the way. Let's just get that out there. There's asteroids that have been discovered. We would have to include thousands of asteroids as planets if Pluto was a planet. It's kind of the size where it's in between a planet and an asteroid, and we've actually landed rockets on asteroids. But yeah, like, for the future of humanity, people like Stephen Hawking are predicting that, like, humanity has so many problems we could go extinct in 100 years. We need to leave this planet and expand elsewhere for the future of our species, to prevent overpopulation, to have more places to live. And the fact that we're fighting and not preparing for awesome future things like this is kind of sad. But also, like, something I personally am interested in is that, for example, if humans found the cure to aging, then obviously we might have problems overpopulating. So colonizing other planets would be extremely important for this. And, this is a very good start. We have entire other worlds we can build on and live on. And it's not just Mars. We have tons of spaces on the asteroid belt. Obviously, we would need really fast space travel, to colonize planets and other solar systems, since that it would take millions of years for even a really fast beam of light to get there, get to other stars. But yeah, which is something we should think about, but this is a good start, landing on planets in our own system that are friendly enough. We've got all these asteroids. So this is really exciting. So with that note, just wanted to say peace out.